And then, of course, you can't write a book with a title like that and get away with it. So every woman who lives nearby me who knows about it was, have you been running today, you fat bitch? And I really had to, I had to live by it.
Welcome to the 7 Day Soul TV and the A Tweak a Week podcast. If you are someone who wants to reach your full potential, who feels like you have more to give, who doesn't want to let your short time here slip through your fingers, then you finally found your tribe. I'm your host, psychologist and author Susanna Healy, and on this show, we'll be talking with expert researchers about all things psyche and soul so that you can achieve your full potential and live a life without regrets. To reach the better angels of our nature, we know the devil's in the detail of what we do repeatedly. So we'll be talking habits, existential health, bucket lists, meaning, mattering, sleep, self-actualization, responsibility, discipline, faith, procrastination, gratitude, goal setting, sex, focus, careers, and loads more. Let's inject the everyday with a passion for your potential. But before we start, just a reminder, if you like the show, then don't forget to subscribe. You can also get your free 100 tips for daily progress by visiting the 7daysoul.com homepage. Or if your workplace is all about human potential and you'd like to sponsor the show, then reach out to join us. Details are in the show notes. Hello and welcome back, everybody, to episode 6 of the A Tweak a Week video podcast. I'm Susanna Healy. Great to have you all back with me, and welcome to any new visitors that are visiting us today. You're in for a treat today. We have the grit doctor with us, Ruth Field, author of Run Fat Bitch Run, also Get Your Shit Together and 20 Reasons to Run, with another book coming out soon. And we'll hear about that in a little while. So if you're lacking in motivation, this is the person you need to speak to and listen to. Also, her books will just make you, I have to say, they make me laugh out loud, which is kind of embarrassing sometimes, I have to say, in all the wrong places. But it's just really, this is a woman who kind of eats procrastination for breakfast. So she will really get you going and just challenge you on all of those excuses that we make. And there's, but my situation's different. Or, tomorrow or New Year's Day, that's when I'm going to start. No, start now. Start now, start this afternoon, start whenever you're reading or listening to this podcast. So it is really about getting going where you stand right now with all the mess that is around us. So really a woman, as I say, that kind of, is all about fighting that procrastination tendency in us, and really where there's excess adipose, excess sofa sitting, excess excuses, whatever it might be, she will sort it out for you. Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you, Susanna, for that lovely introduction.
Well, I think it's true. I really think it's true. Even after you just kind of rereading your books, because sometimes we get into these zones of motivation, don't we? And then we kind of lose them again. It is something, motivation is something that we need to kind of work on ongoingly, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes feel a bit guilty about how I wrote Run Fat Bitch Run before I became a mother. And when, of course, everything seemed a lot more straightforward, and I was very sort of, hold on a second, why are people complaining about not being able to do this? Because actually, just do it, kind of thing. And it was ironic. Ironic's probably the wrong word, but when I had twins, the book hadn't yet come out. It was in the sort of being sold stage, and I was completely stuck on the sofa with the twins, thinking, I'll never be able to run again. I'm so tired. And all the excuses that I'd written in the book, suddenly I was using myself. But I think it was because I'd written the book, and maybe because I'm a Catholic, which I'm sure we'll come to, I felt so guilty that I'd written this book that was ordering everyone around, and I wasn't doing it myself anymore. And I just had to, get myself up and get running, because I'd written a book that was going to come out. And and so in a weird way, the book became it got me back into running, my own book. And then of course you can't write a book with a title like that and get away with it. So every woman who lives nearby me who knows about it was, have you been running today, you fat bitch? And I really had to, I had to live by it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I still run pretty much every day. And I've run with lots of women locally and still do, I mainly run with a friend. I have 2 friends that I run with on different days, because I find that being together with someone else is hugely motivating. If you've made a plan to meet, we meet at like 7 a.m., to run before work. You're much less likely to duck out of it if you've made that plan, because I don't take my phone with me. So, we trust each other that we've made that commitment. We meet at the gates to the wood and we go on that run. So yeah, I mean, I do understand the procrastination and the wanting to sit on the sofa, but ultimately, even with the twins, it was a case of, putting one foot in front of the other and just doing it.
And it kind of is, isn't it? Because I do kind of relate to that. My own first book was Fabulous Jelly, Use Your Brain to Lose Weight. And it was based on my own weight loss journey. I've kind of struggled with my weight all my life, really. And it was about when I finally came around to using some techniques and some very simple things. Sometimes I feel like I could actually just abbreviate into run and lower the carbs, to be honest. But we can get to that, But it was all about the psychology, because I do think most of us know, we know it's good for us. We know that diet's good for us and this is good for us and that's bad for us. And all. We know the basics. You don't need to be a dietitian to know, generally speaking, what's good and bad for us. It's all around the motivation question. And even I mean, I do remember, but afterwards I remember actually kind of like struggling again and then trying to, starting up again. That motivation, do you think does it come and go for you, do you think, or do you feel like it's a muscle that you learn?
It's such a good question. I think if there was a sort of definitive answer to it, we'd solve so many of all of our exercise, weight, procrastination issues. There isn't a straight answer, but what I've found as I've gotten older is that I see motivation almost a little bit more as a choice, in the sense that I'm not sure that I feel motivated first. So by that I mean, what I know, because I know from habit and from how a day looks, I know that if I do get up and meet my friend for that run at 7 a.m., okay, I'm never motivated to do it. But what I know is that if I do it, that everything else in my day will be easier, and the motivation for everything else in my day will probably be there because I've been running. So the run is actually the motivation for me. Like, once I've run, I can get everything else done. But whether that's psychosomatic, what I do know is that I'm never really that motivated to do it. I just choose to do it because it will make everything else easier. And I find that the eating thing is so connected to the running. So if I run, I know I'll be hungry, but somehow my food choices are always better because I've run. Like, I feel happy. It's because I feel happier. I feel calmer. I feel more myself. I feel, wanting to put good stuff into my body. I'm energized but calm. It's all of that stuff. So for me, the motivation is almost comes as a result of the exercise. But how to get motivated to do the exercise, I think for me, is literally the night before making that commitment with a friend, and I know we're going to do it. I just wouldn't just not turn up.
Yeah. That's interesting. So there's a couple of things in there, and I came across a paper only this morning, and it was if we have this whole mindset thing, it's kind of like, you were saying there about you make the first choices to go running, and then the motivation comes, which is not to wait for the motivation. I think is what you're saying, isn't it? Just to make it a choice of doing.
Yeah, because I think if
right?
we think of motivation as a sort of feeling that we're going to get, I don't think motivation works that way. I think motivation comes from once you've started on some kind of action. It doesn't have to be running. For me, it's running, but it could be anything for anyone.
Yeah.
It's like the motivation comes after you've started doing the thing, I think. I don't think it's there first.
Yes.
It isn't for me. I never expect or hope for sort of motivation to come my way, I just think, right, Ruth, you know, get running, or I don't even actually think that. I just do it because I feel everything else is easier to motivate myself to do is easier because I've been on that run.
Yeah. This paper was saying, you know, kind of would back that up as well. But it was interesting. It was saying that if we have this sense of a fuel tank, and if you worked really hard, and if you have a kind of a limited sense of kind of the capacity of, you have a certain limited capacity in terms of your energy, then you will actually say, well, I've been working really hard, so it's perfectly understandable that I'm tired now and I want to put my feet up. Whereas if you think of it the way you do, as actually an energy, that work or running and exercise are all energizing, that they actually create, that movement creates energy, which is a much more kind of, you know, self-fueling kind of attitude, then actually you'll feel like, oh no, I'm really, you know, I'm in the zone. I'm going to keep going now, you know.
Yes, absolutely. But, you know, within that, there's also there's often a time in the afternoon where I'm exhausted. But, you know, so I'm all for having a nap or, you know, reading a book. And but I just feel I'm much more effective and efficient if I've been on my run, and I definitely don't wait to feel motivated. But look, you know, Susanna, like everyone, I have days when I'm in a slump and I can't be bothered. I'm just the same as everyone else. I feel like a lot of us are looking at other people thinking, wow, she's so much more kind of, you know, motivated or getting so much more done. And I think that's, you know, a fallacy of modern life, and also because of all of social media and how we see people's lives. But also it is in and of itself incredibly demotivating. There's nothing worse than looking at other people thinking, wow, how are they so motivated for everything? Well, I would say they're probably not. They're probably just doing it and then hoping that, you know, knowing that the motivation is, they're not thinking about motivation. It's a bit like writer's block. You know, if you're a writer, you just write. You know, you sometimes it's not very good writing, or sometimes it's really hard, but you still do it. You don't sort of think, oh, I've got writer's block today. Well, that's bad luck. That's a bit like saying I'm not motivated. To me.
You know, you open Run Fat Bitch Run with the kind of what you call the pointless pledge.
I can't remember.
I don't even remember back to this. I know the feeling when somebody takes a comment in your book, you're kind of going, that was a long time ago I wrote that. I know. But I had to laugh because it said, part of it was, I swear on my mother's life, and it went on. And I don't know if you have in the UK, but my kids are going through this phase at the moment. If they want to kind of like make sure that somebody's telling the truth, they'll say, go mums on it. And that means go and swear on your mother's life. So I hear my boys kind of saying mums on it, mum. And you're kind of going, is this a compliment in a way? Because the idea behind it is that you would never lie and swear on your mother's life and break it. On the other hand, I'm kind of going, it's a bit touch and go here.
Are they actually lying a lot? And not caring about their mother's life. That's what I would worry.
Exactly. I'm going to go into, I get a say in this a little bit, but I have to say, I thought it was funny. One thing that I also noticed is that, you know, I'm just looking at the cover of your book, and this may be a very old copy of it, I don't know, but it's a great, I just love this. I think it's a great cover. But, you know, very female, and so is mine, very female. And I'm just wondering, what do you think about that? Do you think, you know, is it something, is it women are harder on themselves? Do we need more drive? Is there a male-female difference, or do men have an inner bitch that you call on to? Do you see a difference?
Yes. I mean, I actually wrote the book for really, it started off as a book for my husband. So it wasn't designed to be for women. It was to try and get him to exercise. And actually, when it got bought, the editor said that she thought that the voice was actually very male, almost like a sort of military sergeant, you know, the Grit Dr. Sam. It's quite a sort of very, well, that's what I was told. And I feel that there is something in that. It's sort of, it's not at all feminine in for want of a better word, but you know, I am a woman, and it turned out to be a really helpful thing for women, but it didn't come from that place. It was very much for a man, and I feel like the voice of the Grit Doctor is strangely quite male. It's my sort of really, no nonsense, sort of straight talking
Sergeant Major kind of
Sergeant Major,
thing.
which is not the sort of voice that women use enough either. I mean, maybe that was what was appealing about it, was that it was a bit different, because it wasn't wrapping anything up in cotton wool. It was quite direct and tough talking. So, I mean, I've had loads of male readers of Run Fat Bitch Run who've loved it just as much. So I think it could have been, if it had a blue cover, maybe it can be resold. Run Fat Bastard Run. I don't feel that any of the advice would. I do think that men have their own inner bitch, and I think it's kind of quite gender neutral in that way. It's just the way it was packaged. But I think men are much less hard on themselves. That I do think. But maybe that's just because I'm a woman and I don't see it. But I feel we're more self-critical and self-doubting and more likely to sort of, chastise ourselves and think we've not done as good a job. Whereas I feel that guys are just a bit better at saying, no, I did a great job, when maybe it was quite average.
Yeah, I think you're right. And even in terms of, I mean, it looks at even in terms of studies that show about, men were much more likely to apply for the job that they don't actually tick all the boxes for in terms of, demands or qualifications needed, whereas a woman will hesitate. So I think you're probably right in that. And I know that I was told when I kind of said, I want a more gender neutral cover, they were kind of going, well, men don't buy these books, but they read the women's books, so an interesting point, they don't buy them, but they will read them. So I thought that was interesting. Do you think we have become too soft? Do we, there's so much talk about kind of listen to your heart and all of that kind of thing and just be true you. Is that softness? Is it over softness? Or do we need to get a little bit of harshness into our lives? Have we become too easygoing on ourselves?
I don't know. I'm not sure that we are easygoing on ourselves. I feel like, things have just got harder in a way for women and for young girls, particularly with social media. I mean, it's just all so intimidating in terms of the sort of constant comparisons with one another, and the world becoming very sort of ego. It's all about, what do I look like? And so I don't know whether it's like we've become too soft, but maybe we've become very self-obsessed, which is definitely, I'm sure, not a good thing, just because I think it makes everyone unhappy. I think when we think too much about ourselves, and particularly what maybe we look like or how we look in comparison to other people, and I don't just mean like our faces and bodies, but our lives, our children, our homes, all of that kind of constant comparison. I don't know if that's soft. It's not a softness. It's just I don't think it makes us feel good about ourselves. I don't think it makes us feel happy. For me, the best way to feel better, other than going for a run, is to sort of, do something that isn't about thinking about, how am I feeling, or how do I look, or, that just kind of grinds me down. If I think about that too much, I'm just bound to get, depressed, because you're always going to find, you're older and fatter and uglier than you want to be, or whatever it is. But, none of that is important. None of that is important. But I think it does. I think that there's too much. I think that there is too much of that. And I think it does, make people sad.
Yeah. So it's a matter of kind of, running, or, and you mentioned it doesn't have to be running. It was running for you, but it might be something else. But that kind of idea of turning the spotlight outside of ourselves, I think outwards, so. As opposed to introspection. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Like, I think introspection is good in some context, but but I generally feel that it's looking outwards is how I feel better, is when I'm just not
Yeah.
thinking about all of that stuff and I'm sort of doing something, or,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And, for people watching this, there's, we'll be coming up in New Year's resolutions. Now, I mentioned earlier, don't wait for New Year's resolutions. At any time of day is the right time to just begin in little steps. But could you give some guide points in terms of somebody who does have dreams or goals or whatever you want to call them, changes that they want to make? How to begin to draw them out of the kind of the cloud in our heads and make them a reality? What would you have advice for people on that?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I mean, firstly, I'd say, like, I'm doing that too. We all have dreams of how we want things to be. So what I suppose my advice would be to to give would just be how I do it for myself, which is to try and firstly to really sort of imagine myself having already succeeded. So let's say your dream is, I don't know, maybe it's to move jobs or to change career in some way, and you don't feel that it's possible, and you kind of lost, you've not got any motivation yet. Well, I would suggest to, like, really envisage yourself already having got the job and doing it happily. So, like, and really bring that kind of vision to life. So, the office and what you're wearing and how you're doing the job and how it feels, and that, just the act of doing that. But, like, I mean it in a really sort of like intense way, like, so really imagine it, not just sort of as a throwaway thought, but as a, really imagine it. So I might do it on a run, for example. I might really get into my head and imagine the thing that it is that I want to be or do, and really see myself doing it and get really detailed about that. So that the dream becomes something that you can actually see yourself in, rather than a dream. It's actually happening in some version of reality in your mind. And I find that is a really great way to start that feeling of motivation coming, is once you start to really see yourself doing it, like, believe you're really, really doing it and seeing yourself doing it, then sometimes the sort of next step to doing it becomes clearer or becomes more doable. You start thinking, well, actually, I can really see it. I can really see it. So, and then it is about the simple things of just taking the first small step. So if it is a job thing, I mean, there's no way around it. The first small step is going to be doing the nitty gritty of, I don't know, CVs and all of that stuff. But imagining, rather than starting with the small steps, imagining the end result first. And sometimes imagining what the thing would be just before you got to the actual end. What would you be doing then, just before you got it? And that way you can sometimes do it in a sort of backward way, and then the first step you really want to do, because you've really seen the journey. Maybe I haven't explained that very well, but
no, it's I completely relate to it, and it really kind of is a kind of a form of self-hypnosis, isn't it? It's kind of an, and the visualizations, and when we're doing visualizations with people, you're getting them to kind of like, what are you wearing? How are you standing? Do you stand differently? So I think that's exactly what you're saying, isn't it? What are the senses?
It's exactly
really getting into it.
Because as a coach, I know that I it's the sort of CBT is that you have your kind of, your thoughts will create your action, the action that you take. Sorry, your thoughts will tend to create the feelings that you have, which will determine the action you take. And out of those three things, the best thing that we can change are the thoughts that we have. And the best way to change the thoughts that we have is to sort of artificially create a different experience that then generates these sort of different thoughts. So the visualization creates a much different cascade of thoughts than, I'm stuck, I can't do anything, I've got no motivation. Those are the thoughts you'll have, which generate feelings of no motivation, inertia, and then the action is, guess what? Nothing. But once you
Yeah.
do the visualization, you actually are creating a different set of thoughts. And once you master that, you will have different feelings, which will be feelings of a bit more powerful, a bit more excited, a bit more hopeful, which will
Yeah.
create different actions, and there'll be much more kind of positive actions. So there's real
Yeah.
science behind it. I think that CBT model, it's changing our thought processes is the most powerful kind of tool that we have. It's really difficult to do because we're thinking all the time, and it's hard to sort of stop certain trains of thoughts. But I find I'm quite a visual person, so for me, as you call it, visualization, meditation, but with visuals and kind of manifesting it in your brain
Yeah.
is for me, and I enjoy that process anyway. So it does create a different set of thoughts, and that's very powerful.
Yeah.
If you can have a different set of thoughts about your dream, you'll be much more likely to take action towards making it happen.
Yeah. And it's kind of happening to us anyway, isn't it? Because we're getting prompted by what we're wearing, who we're hanging around with, who we're spending our time with. I mean, I notice, for example, that, in order to do a good clean of the house, I need the kind of baggy, rotten kind of tracksuit on and a pair of runners, and I'll do a much better job. I'll get in under stuff. I'll reach for stuff. I don't mind getting dirty or whatever it might be. Just get going into it. Whereas if I'm kind of like in work clothes, just quick dust, very light something or other, a quick wipe or whatever, and that's about it. Kind of, and yet I know also that there's the kind of manky tracksuit and there's the kind of nicer tracksuit. And again, or how expandable the waistband is will affect me, So
Yeah,
I kind of think,
yeah.
would you agree? We're kind of always getting prompted by the environment without even realizing it.
Oh my goodness, absolutely, absolutely. And we have what you've just described as a really, that thought process and the cascade of
Yeah.
if you wear this thing, therefore that job's going to get done. And what's really what's happening is that that neural pathway in your brain is really well trodden, and it works, and it's a
Mm,
really good habit, because
mm,
actually
mm.
what you've just described is a brilliant way of getting those shitty jobs done, which actually to one
Yeah.
of your listeners, they might not have done that. I mean, I haven't either. And I'm thinking that's a really good technique. I'm going to do that. I know that if I put my runners on in the morning, I'm going to go for that run. So
Yeah.
for you with that, and that's really important, because those pathways, those connections that are happen in our brain generate
Mm,
those action steps. And for you, maybe that's just a kind of, it's a habit that happens, and you don't even realize it's actually, a lot of people have to be really motivated to do that, or think of being motivated, but actually you've just
yeah.
done it because of, if you put those clothes on, you'll have those thoughts and you'll get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same, because you were talking earlier about going out, with friends, and if you've kind of made that pre-commitment the night before. And really what we surround ourselves with and the people that we surround ourselves really matters, doesn't it?
It really does.
And it could be a book or something, but the voices that are coming and affecting us matter.
Absolutely. But, books aside, I think as women, having a great group, or you don't have to have a group, actually, just even one really good
Mm,
woman, not dissing the men at all, but I find that having, and by good women, I mean women that, lift you up, that are also invested in your dreams and believe in them with you, and, champion you. That's
mm,
golden. Whereas if you're with people, and obviously friends go through really tough times, and sometimes you're spending a lot of time with a best friend who's suffering, and so they're not in that kind of let's chase our dreams sort of vibe. That's different. But generally, you need friends that raise you up, and you raise each other up, and you're invested in each other's dreams, and you're calling it forth all the time and checking in with each other. The women that I go running with, we're always checking in with you, remembering the things that we hope for, and want to happen for each other, and
mm.
yeah, champion each other along the way, because the daily grind, it gets us all down. You need other people who've also got an eye on your dream, who are calling it forth in that way, and helping
Yeah.
you visualize it and make it happen.
Yeah. I think I totally agree with it. And I think it's really, because a lot of times the people that we hang around with can be habitual, or it's just situational. It's, or, whoever is around us locally, or our family, whatever it might be. And I think you sometimes have to get a little bit more proactive in terms of who you're listening to and who's around you. And it might be, if you have dreams or you're entrepreneurial or whatever it might be, you might need to kind of cherry pick who you're going to spend some time with, or try and build a group little by little.
Absolutely, Susanna. And it's really hard because, you feel guilty if you're not, if you've been really good friends with someone for ages, but you realize they're not really, you're not serving each other in the way that you want. Alice, my business partner, has a brilliant kind of metaphor for it, which is a dartboard, and that, you're in the bullseye, and, be very careful who you choose to have in that bullseye bit with you. It's a very small space. You don't need many. And remember, you can always move someone from the bullseye to an outer ring for a bit. They're not gone. They're just not in your inner sanctum. They're not in your inner circle. And move them. People will come and go into your life as and when. But those that are not wanting what you want for yourself and wanting what's best for you are going to, they're not going to help make it happen for you. And there are all sorts of reasons why people might not be invested in what you want, and actually friendships change and evolve. And it doesn't mean that, you've dumped each other, but you might rearrange things for different times of your life.
And I think it is about isn't it about getting more honest about what you want for yourself, and making sure that everything around you kind of is pointing in that direction towards yourself, and that, and being, just being kind of more honest about it. And you talk about, you were presenting, I can't remember after which book it was, but you tell the story of you were really nervous presenting you were asked to come into your publishing company and present, and you had to say, I'm really nervous.
Yeah, it was so weird because, I'd been a criminal barrister for sort of 10 years and used to sort of doing jury speeches, and I couldn't understand the level of nerves that I had for just talking to this small group at the publishing house. It was like off the scale. I was almost having a sort of full-on panic attack on my way in, and I just didn't know why it was happening or what was happening, really. So I thought that the way to deal with it was to just say it, I think is what I said in the book, was because I can remember it. And I remember just being really honest and saying it. I'm not sure I'd be so honest now. I think, but there was something about the level of derangement I was feeling that I just thought it must be so obvious to everyone. So I better just own it and say it. And actually, it was fine. As soon as I said it, I relaxed a bit, because I think hiding stuff creates a lot more extra sort of tension, stress, shame, all of those things, which really inhibit us. And if you show that any vulnerability, immediately there's connection. As soon as you show that you're frightened or you're nervous and say it, people, respond to that, because it's so human, isn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, because I remember, I speak for a living, and yet I remember one day standing up, just being introduced, something came over me, whether I was just that feeling of, I actually just kind of want to be at home. I just felt vulnerable. I just didn't want to be on stage, as it were, kind of thing. And I remember, that kind of explosion in my heart. And anxiety is a horrible thing, but some of it is part of it. If you share it, then you kind of take the power out of it, I think, because part of it is like, do they know? Are they noticing, or whatever, another time I remember, that was a long, long time ago, but I remember another time coming back after COVID. And I tell the story a lot because I just think it's, again, it's important to share for people. But coming back after COVID, definitely, I'd lost my mojo in terms of speaking, in public, because it's so easy to speak behind a little screen, isn't it? And you kind of to stand up on a stage and da. So I had to say, hi, good morning, everybody. I'm actually really nervous. And what happened afterwards was interesting, because the CEO afterwards, who was thanking me, kind of said, actually, I was nervous coming back too. This was their big welcome back event, And isn't it funny how we all just think everybody else is doing great? It's that Instagram life or the Instagram audience member, whatever. And actually, It's
Yes,
that sharing of vulnerability.
so true. And I mean, I've had lots of occasions when I haven't shared it and really regretted it because I felt sort of
Mm.
too shy or too anxious, or it was felt like too big a deal. But also, what I was going to say was, I feel like as I get older, and perhaps also since becoming a mother, I definitely get more nervous than I used to. And I
Mm.
don't know whether it's an age thing, but that has definitely increased with age. Even there's something about getting older and you amass more experience, and yet for me, I feel like I know even less. The more I know, the less, it's that sort of
Mm.
stripping away of, any kind of sense of sureness about anything, which I'm sure is a good thing, because it's that knowing that really you have such a short time on earth and we don't really know very much at all. And whereas when you're young, there's that confidence of thinking
Yeah.
stuff that goes, doesn't it, as you get older, but
Yeah.
not in a negative way or in a sort of, oh, I don't know what I'm talking about way, but there's a humility to that, knowing that, wow, I really don't know anything at all.
Yeah.
Which makes me
I,
nervous.
I totally. I'm hoping we can call it wisdom,
Yes, yes,
but
that's the word. That's the word.
yeah. Let's call it wisdom. It's more flattering. But I
Definitely.
agree with you. I think I think we kind of feel that there's these kind of like descriptions of success, or kind of like as if it's kind of like a straight up line kind of thing, and maybe it's actually about realizing that the world isn't just a predictable straight graph kind of thing, and being more comfortable with actually realizing there's things unknown, and they're quite
Mm.
exciting things that are unknown.
Yes, yes. And then just trying to manage those nerves or anxiety by firstly, whenever one can, just owning up to it is a great way of diffusing it.
Yeah.
And various self-regulation techniques. I mean, I do a lot of kind of breath work and stuff now if I'm really nervous.
Okay.
Um,
Right. Okay. Interesting. Do you feel that you are is there a kind of a softening do you find in your writing there's a softening in your voice, or there's a kind of do you feel that that's coming through in your writing?
Definitely. I mean, if you read the new book, The Heartbreak Hotel, it's definitely a lot softer, but it's also, it's still got the humor. But yes, I mean, I love those Grit Doctor books, and I love that energy that I had in that iteration of myself that was, in my
Yeah.
early 30s. It's, you're a different person then.
Mm.
And there was a real confidence and a no nonsense and a sort of directness that I still have, but not probably as much. There are
Mm.
different voices, I suppose, that I have now, and there's a softening of a lot of stuff. But then, the running thing has stayed with me. That kind of no nonsense, get up and do it with the running, because it will really help.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, that there's a sort of softening of, a sense that life has been really hard for lots of people, and things that perhaps I didn't take quite as much into account before, I feel like I do now. I mean, COVID made me
Yeah.
soft. I think, just sort of
Right.
felt so humbled by it, by being, lucky enough not to have a family member that died, and lucky, sort of lucky to have a house and a garden and all these things that so many people didn't have.
Mm.
And, just that made me feel a lot more vulnerable, I think, than I
Yeah.
had done, maybe.
Yeah.
And
I
grateful,
think.
sort of,
Yeah. I think.
things like even
But
my parents, who I am grateful for, but I'm often complaining about. But, in COVID, I suddenly felt a sort of softness towards them that I hadn't
yeah.
felt in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love you mentioned your dad's advice. Everyone is faking it to a certain extent, kind of thing, which is
Yeah,
I kind of
yes,
like that.
yeah,
Just to realize, and that's why I think people relate to vulnerability and realize, oh, great, I can let that guard go, kind of thing. I think that's great. And the
yeah.
other thing that I want to come to that gratitude piece in just a moment, but I do love the when you when you talked about feng shuiing the hell out of your house and your life.
I didn't remember
I
that.
just love that phrase. It's fantastic.
Ah,
Absolutely love it.
but,
It really made me laugh out loud. But you mentioned there, and I think COVID has put manners on a lot of us. It kind of there
mm,
just to realize this virus is so tiny and yet at the same time so much bigger than us, and so that there are bigger forces than ourselves, some that we know and understand and some that we don't. And
mm,
you also in your book and in your writing, you do bring in your own religious beliefs into this, and you've got some really lovely quotes from St. John of the Cross, and that kind of thing. So could you tell me a little bit about how or if it does impact your working life? Is it something, are you religious and spiritual? Do you see a difference between the two, or how do you see that part of your life?
yeah. I mean, I definitely feel spiritual and religious, and I feel that they are. I mean, for me, I'm a Catholic. I'm a practicing Catholic. I've raised our sons as Catholic. I'm married to an atheist. So you know, I think I practice my Catholicism because it's what I'm used to, and I was raised as a Catholic, and I love the rituals around being a Catholic. I like going to mass. I like that change of mindset that happens when I go into a place of worship and kneel down and listen to these old stories. And, there's something about that for me that really takes me to a place of spirituality that I can't find it in any other way. I mean, it happens to me when I'm praying, which I also often do when I'm running. So
Mm-hmm.
a run for me is a kind of prayer, and always has been. Like a prayer of thanks that I can run is also, I'm flooded with this huge sense of gratitude that I can run. It feels like such a gift,
Okay.
and I
And
stay in that
just for
space.
a lot of people listening and watching will kind of think, generally speaking, think of prayer as something we say. It's the Our Father in the Catholic
Yeah,
tradition or whatever
yeah,
it might be. Is that what you mean, that you're speaking, or do you mean it
yeah, yeah.
non-verbally?
No, I am. In during the run, I am giving thanks. I mean, to God,
Mm-hmm.
or what. I don't even think of it really as a God thing. It's more of a giving thanks for being able to run, because of the gift of of having run. The gift of that in my life is so immense to me. So
Yeah.
it's a kind of prayer that I am actually saying a prayer while I'm running. But to me, the actual run itself is a kind of prayer. I don't really know what I mean by that now that I've said it. I think I mean that I don't know, it's like a celebration of your body and your mind and it all working, and that is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gift
Yeah.
that not everybody has.
Yeah.
So
And do you struggle? I mean, so many people have left organized religion. Do
yeah.
you find that, do you think it's okay if people are kind of a la carte about it, if they pick and choose? Do you find, no, I kind of, what is it to you? Do you have an image of God or that you don't mind sharing or not? Or is it a more abstract feeling, or
I think
what is
100%. I
it to
love
you?
that phrase, à la carte, about religion. I've never heard that, but I think that's
Okay.
exactly what people should be if they choose to be religious. And I certainly am. I mean, I can't bear some of the Catholic teachings about, you know, homosexuality, or,
Mm.
the othering of that is just complete. I believe that if Jesus, the Jesus that I love from the stories in the Bible would just laugh at all of that. He just wouldn't. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a man that wanted the most othered people to sit with them,
Mm.
that is not a man who would other anyone. He would have all the trans people, all the gay people, or, you know, because he had the prostitutes and the tax, you know. So to me, that's something that's gone wrong by the powers that be along the way. That's got nothing to do with Jesus or God as I see them, if indeed I see them. I just I don't really think about it that much. I just like the idea of there being a sort of, what I like about believing in something is it gives you a sense of hope, this hope as a sort of choice again, rather than as a, you know, living in hope is living with ideas that are bigger than oneself, and I love that. I love that idea. The idea of it is, I love, but it doesn't mean that I think that it's real necessarily, or the truth. I don't trouble myself with that. I just like that when I practice going to mass, it brings something more to my week and to my relationships and to the love that I have for my family. It just makes my life feel better, you know, and makes me try harder, I think. And I just, I just like the peace and quiet of it sometimes, to be honest, Susanna. An hour of quiet away. I tend to take one twin each week because it's my special time with one of them, and I can only persuade them to go once every other week. So,
so
it's
a
quite
good deal.
cool, just the two of us in silence for an hour. It's the only time we're ever quiet. So,
and that's just it, isn't it? I mean, and I know people who kind of said, well, I don't know, I'm not Catholic at all, or I don't believe at all, but sometimes I go into the church just to sit. And other people will kind of, oh no, because it represents this, that, and the other. But I've heard people who just go to sit because there's something in it bringing you those kind of spaces, bringing you somewhere else. And we were talking earlier before we started recording about, you know, that it can bring you to a place that I use it sometimes to just bring you into me a different mode of mind is all I can say, just a different way of looking at the world. Because I do think, you know, and I don't know if you find this, but sometimes people will kind of say, how could you believe in this or that, or agree with this or condone this? And you kind of go, none of it, none of the above. That, you know, that you do pick and choose, and still it's okay perhaps to stay with a faith and to just kind of going, well, it's,
absolutely.
some of the things.
And I just think, you know, we can't judge, you know, judging each other for all of that stuff is just so damaging. You know, let people be, you know, whatever faith or not faith, or, you know, it's all, to me, it's all the same thing anyway. But also, you know, I just think spending time judging other people for their choices around their religion is just, well, do something else with your time, because actually these things are very nuanced and complex, and everyone's just trying their best to, and, you know, it's not my responsibility, nor is it the next person's responsibility that, you know, some priests have done wrong. That's not on me. I abhor it as much as the next person. But, you know, there are still some beautiful things for me about being a Catholic. And but if I was born an atheist or a Jew or a Muslim or whatever it is, there'd be beautiful things about that too. I mean, I think atheism is more complicated, because I think there's a sort of, it's difficult to talk to someone. I mean, my husband's an atheist, so I can say this, and I love him, obviously. But there's a sort of, it's almost like we're speaking such a different language, because the atheist is adamantly against all organized religion and is all about disproving the existence of, but proof and existence of it have nothing to do with faith. So that that's more complicated. But other than atheists, who, again, I'm married to one, my business partner's one, so it's not like I have a problem with it, but I think that's the slightly more complicated position to argue with. I think everything else is broadly the same. It's just, you know, we're all trying in our own ways to access our spiritual selves, because we all feel, I think, something that
Yeah.
that inside of us, a sort of calling forth of ourselves, or whatever that is, that needs nurturing, that needs watering, in order to thrive.
Yeah. I so agree. And it is something, and it is so experiential that you can't bring it back down into words, because it is kind of wordless. It's a feeling, isn't it? So
I mean, there was a
yeah, I
wonderful
totally
book
agree.
that I read a long time ago now, but is it called The Case for God? And I remember the name of the writer, but I can see it, Karen Armstrong. It's on my bookshelf.
Oh,
She was, I think
yes.
she was
Yeah.
a nun, and then she became an atheist, and then she became a nun again, or something like that. But it's all about the roots of, it's the history of the Catholic faith, but it's also about these words: belief, faith, practice, and that where they come from, and it really has nothing to do with the things that a lot of particularly atheists think it has to do with. Nothing to do with
Yeah.
it. It's literally
Because
just
she actually
like
talks about, she's amazing. She's written so much, and she's, a hugely intelligent and academic woman. But because she actually, I know what you're talking about, because she mentions that the word credo, which we translate, does this ring a bell with you?
yeah,
That we translate it now as I believe, and she said it's I engage with, and that would just
change
help
everything.
change everything, wouldn't it?
I
Yeah,
know. I mean, I think, Susanna, like we were saying, there's something so alienating and othering about the language of religion. All religions have this problem. And if only there was a way of making language itself around belief, faith, spirituality more inclusive and whole, it would change so much for people, because it's the language is so problematic, or people's understanding of the language.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. It can really bring up borders and boundaries between us. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Ruth, you mentioned a little while ago your business partner, Alice Haddon. And now you're in a new venture together, or perhaps the venture isn't new, but you've got a new book coming out on the 1st of February, and you have a whole series of workshops going on. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yes. So we run retreats, both residential retreats for 3 to 4 days and day retreats in London for heartbroken women, mainly around romantic betrayal. And the book that comes out in February is an attempt to recreate that experience of the retreats, the full retreats, for the reader. So the reader is invited into the Heartbreak Hotel book as if they were going on the journey of the retreat with 5 other guests in the book, and they all experience it together. So the reader will be doing the exercises with the other guests in the book.
Okay.
So it's quite unusual. We hope in a really good way. It's written partly as a play, so that it really does feel as if it's happening. And we're really excited about it. We are particularly excited because it's a way of democratizing our full retreat offering, which is, of course, they're very expensive to put on retreats. Not everyone is going to be able to afford to come. We can only help 8 to 10 women at a time on the full retreat. We only run 4 a year. We want to help all women. So the book is one way of doing that. And these day retreats also can be for 20 women, which is great and a lot cheaper. We're hoping to soon to maybe take them on the road. We could definitely come to Ireland to do a few workshops.
We'll talk about that. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
wonderful. I mean, Alice is an experienced and absolutely phenomenal psychologist. So she came up with this incredible idea and the process that we take these women through. And I kind of co-facilitate it with her. I'm a coach by training for our business venture, but also, she's an introvert, I'm an extrovert. On the retreats, you need that yin and yang. I'm in charge of the sort of hospitality side, taking people for walks, making sure they're okay in between these very powerful therapeutic sessions that Alice leads. So it's been an incredible journey. We only started in November 2021. So we were very lucky that a book agent came on the first retreat, hence why the book has happened so quickly. So that felt like a miracle to me. An atheist miracle, as Alice and I call them together, laughing. When these
There's something in that. That was meant to be. However way you look at it, that was meant to be.
I'm joking.
And for the 3 and 4 day retreats, what are kind of if you could just tell us even just what kind of experiences have women been through that come to you, whether it's for the 1 day retreat or the 3 or 4 day retreat?
I mean, sadly, a lot of the experiences are very similar, which I mean, the day retreat is very specifically, and the main retreat has been more often than not around betrayal. So the name of the retreat is Moving Beyond Betrayal. But so the women come with these absolutely heartbreaking stories of having been left, often completely out of the blue. They didn't see it coming, which is also incredibly common, by, very, very long-term partners, in long marriages or long relationships, often with children. We had a woman come in her 70s who'd, been married for 50, nearly 50 years and just didn't see it coming, to be left. But also we have young ones who come who, we had a few who, jilted at the altar type scenarios, or just before. And actually we had one very young woman come from Austria on one of the full retreats, and she'd been in a 6-month relationship, but she was absolutely devastated by it because of the same thing of not seeing it coming and not understanding why it happened. And that's what unites everyone, is this devastation around the life that they thought they were going to have with this person having been taken from them, and then not understanding why. And so they're often caught in this very difficult loop of obsessive rumination that's really hard to break out of. But Alice has a brilliant set of techniques to help break that cycle, because what the rumination is really doing is it's the brain's way of preventing you facing what sits underneath it, which is the loss, which is you've been left because you're not loved and you've been rejected. The rumination, which is the why did it happen and I don't understand because this is the brain's way of stopping you sitting in that, the pain of what's actually happened. And unfortunately you have to stay in that place of the awful truth of it in order to be able to move to the next stage of the process. So the first day of the retreat is really getting our guests clear on that, and in the day retreat, because they all come with this. That's the thing that unites everyone, is this incredible sort of this rumination. I mean, this obsessive rumination that's really hard to break out of.
Yeah. And as you say, as we were speaking earlier, it's almost, well, different to a bereavement in that it feels done to you actively and ongoingly done to you, and that it's
the rejection. It's an active, ongoing rejection, coupled with often a choice to be living the life that you were living with another person. Yeah, which is just that is devastating to have to kind of keep being subjected to. Yeah. Well, the book is called Finding Yourself at the Heartbreak Hotel. Yes. And it's launched globally, almost as 1st of February. 1st of February, UK, US, Canada, by HarperCollins, and then in translation in Germany and the Netherlands and Italy and Poland, and I can't remember. I think that's everywhere so far.
So far. Yeah. And before everybody calls in and says, that's not fully globally, I'm sorry. I know there's other parts of the world. I know the world is really big. I'm sorry for saying that, but it's pretty out there. I think let's say it's available, definitely.
Earlier, I'm manifesting it as global, so I have to keep calling it global in order for it to become global.
It's pretty global. It's pretty global, let's be honest. Just all right. And listen, one last and final question. If I could ask, I ask all guests for if you could give somebody a tweak, as it what we call it, just a little bit of advice for, say, the week to come in getting going in whatever way they might want to make a little bit of what I call personal progress. What might you suggest?
Well, I mean, I was thinking about this in the context of, spiritual growth. When I was thinking about it for this recording, and I was thinking that one of the things that I do so regularly that really helps me is spending time, like saying a prayer. And if the prayer was simply what we discussed earlier, which is a sort of visualization, manifestation of that, goal and seeing yourself doing it, but making time to do that. It's the thing of making real time to do it. So that would be my tweet, would be every day set aside, 5 minutes to get yourself really, really visualizing and manifesting where it is you want to be and envisioning yourself doing it and praying for it, not praying to God but making it like a prayer. Can a prayer be a non-religious thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I think it can. Yeah.
Because there's in prayer, you're sort of willing something to happen by praying for it. You're asking for it. You're asking God or the universe, whatever, but that's kind of making it happen. You're trying to make it happen by calling upon something to help make it happen. Even if that if that calling upon is really yourself, it's all the same thing. It's trying to make it a little bit more real and a little bit more alive rather than something that's just a fantasy.
Yes. Kind of aligning all your resources.
Yeah.
Whatever
and then
whoever
go
they
for a
might
run.
be. But and go for a run.
Or a walk.
Oh, that's it. Ruth, I can't thank you enough. That has been so fascinating to speak with you.
Oh,
And
I've enjoyed it so much.
thank you for being with us. I hugely, hugely appreciate you being here. I was so inspired by your books. But I think there is a new, a kind of a new softness and wisdom in your work as you continue, isn't there? So I'm really looking forward to the next one, and I will certainly be ordering it if I can. So everybody watch out for that book coming out on the 1st of February, and we can put details in the show notes as well, just to remind everybody, and about your workshops. We'll get some information on that as well, because I think people would there might be quite a lot of interest here too, and wherever people might be watching and listening from. So Ruth, 1,000 thanks for being with us. Take care. We'll see you again next week for next week's episode. And until then, take care of yourself and each other. Bye-bye.